Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are celebrating International Human Rights Day. And I come from a country which has very poor human rights record. And with me, we have Honorable Mr. Paulo Casaca. He is ex-member of European Parliament. He is Executive Director of South Asia Democratic Forum. He is doing a wonderful job. He speaks on human rights issues of South Asia, in particular Pakistan, where I come from. Thank you, Mr. Casaca, for joining us.
Thank you very much for this very kind invitation. It is a pleasure, Mr. Aajakia, to be with you and to be with all of those that are following us, wherever they are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the place where you are right now.
Mr. Casaca, we are celebrating International Human Rights Day today. How do you see, after your extensive study of Pakistan in particular, how do you see human rights record in Pakistan? Where do you, comparing to the free world, where do you keep Pakistan in your assessment?
Well, you see, I think that the basis for the respect of human rights is exactly to respect human beings as they are. I mean, their political opinion, their religious convictions, their language, their ethnic traditions, well, everything that gives an individual and actually as well a collective identity has to be respected. Of course, that there are limits to this. I mean, if you say, well, my religion thinks that all of those who do not believe in my religion must be beheaded. Well, that's a problem, of course, because this is not a human right. Human rights have to be, by definition, considering each human being in relation with the other. And my rights finish when the rights of the others start. So this is the global definition. History, the position I have been now, I am 63 and I have been thinking about these issues for a very long time, since the first time, a very long time ago, in the beginning of the 80s, when in the Azores, in the island where I was living, I created at the time the first Amnesty International local group. That was the name, and we had our the people that we were following, and we were fighting for their freedom. And so it was nearly four decades ago. And then, of course, I was at university, but I had several political engagements. As you mentioned, European Parliament was one of them, in the diplomacy as well. And now I am with this think tank, South Asia Democratic Forum. And what I do believe is that, history, you cannot rewrite it. Whenever I read about the partition, and I have been reading lately some historical documents on the partition was a tragedy, a tremendous tragedy, and I think it's not only the number of people that were slaughtered; it was the intolerance that was erected as a principle, and of course that I'm sure that those in Europe that have a lot of responsibility for this, I think that they should be, of course, that they are certainly not pleased with what they did. I think it was a terrible heritage that was transmitted to what is now South Asia, and mainly, although the process is more complex than that, but mainly what was at the time Pakistan and India. So, I mean, it happened. a tragedy. Okay, but then life is what it is. I am Portuguese, and Portugal, always we learn in school. Well, that's true. It's the oldest country in Europe, with Denmark to a certain extent, that which borders are more or less untouched since 800 years. Okay, well, so, and of course I'm proud to be Portuguese, my history, so on and so on and so on and so on. But in the end of the day, the fact is that Portugal started by a revolt of one son against his mother. Well, I wouldn't say it is really an example to be followed. But if you would say, oh, that's the reason why you should really think about Portugal, well, life is what it is, and constructions exists. And what is essential is to look at the human beings. And what I've seen in Pakistan is that what was done in the beginning, which was not very clever, has not been amended and has been getting worse all the time. We had the tragedy of the genocide of Bangladesh. We have a similar, although more forgotten and less well known, but actually it's not very different, what has been happening in Balochistan. And we have seen at the same time the encroachment of intolerance and lack of respect for the other. It's, for instance, these blasphemy laws that actually are a colonial heritage. People sometimes speak about, oh, colonialism is so terrible. Well, it is a colonial heritage. I mean, the way that they have been ever more twisted to persecute whoever is different from you is terrible, absolutely terrible. And it's terrible for the whole of the Pakistani people, for those who believe in this sort of attitude as well. Because first you start by saying, well, there are these Ahmadiyas. Okay, Ahmadiyas, okay. But then it's not only the Ahmadiyas. And then, it's the Shias. Okay, well. And then it's, if you are Barelvi, or if you are not Barelvi, if you are Deobandi, and then it never stops. It is an ongoing story of intolerance, hate that never decreases. I'm seeing, Salman Taseer, and it was more or less when a little after SADF was created. It was horrifying. What is more horrendous, of course, is not the fact that he was killed. It was the fact that a lot of people approved the assassination. Unbelievable. And this has not been going better. It has been going worse. And this is what I have to say to my dear Pakistani friends, from whatever confession you are, whatever religious belief you have, whatever ethnic upbringings, whoever lives in this country, even those who do not want to continue to be Pakistanis, be them Balochis, be them whatever they are, Pashtun, Gilgit, Baltistan. Well, this cannot go on. And we have to make a stop. And Europe and the West in general must stop to be accomplices in the way things are going, because it is unbelievable that the European decision makers decide to say that Pakistan is such a wonderful constitutional human rights country that it deserves a prize, special treatment for growth because it is the GSP Plus, which is a premium. Actually, I don't think this helps Pakistan. I think it goes against the interest of the people of Pakistan. Pakistani people, eyes on eyes, have to say, well, listen, You are fantastic people. You have a lot of capacities. You have a very rich, tremendous history. You are the people of the Hindus. When Alexander the Great, when he got there, thousands of years ago, you couldn't believe it. And how rich it was from every point of view, and also from the point of view of political development. This is the same people. Okay, colonizers come and go, Islam, Christianity, whatever. Okay, we respect all religions, but please be proud of your history. Be proud of your history. Be proud of your high moments, and go and do not restrict yourselves. Just forget about this completely crazy idea that India wants to finish Pakistan. It's absolutely, it makes no sense. India is a very complex country, has problems of its own, and of course that India is no obstacle. India is going to obviously do its best to defend itself and to counterattack Pakistan as long as this game will go on. I think it's possible. There is Ambassador Akani, in Washington. He once said, "Well, I dream of the day that India and Pakistan is a bit like the United States and Canada." Why not? Why not? Okay, sorry, I'm speaking a lot. It's a passionate issue. Please.
Mr. Casaca, as you mentioned that Europe is coming up with this issue of Islamophobia or Islamic extremism, France and Austria are recent victims of Islamic extremism. But on the European level, still we don't find a resolve for this, because France is fighting alone. And France, day before yesterday, they decided to close 80 mosques. Noam Chomsky, yesterday he was speaking to a seminar in Karachi, and he clearly said that Pakistan is running away from scientific development and is going to the stupidity of Islamic extremism, which is a self-destructing thing for Pakistan. How do you see when Imran Khan, Pakistan's prime minister, says that India should look after their minorities? Minorities in India are in problems, while in Pakistan, religious minorities are disappearing. Forced conversion is going on. So how do you see at European level, how can you overcome this Islamic extremism in West in particular?
Well, you see, the problem in the West as a whole, and Europe is a case in point, is that appeasement is the mainstream ideology that is surfacing all the time. From time to time, for instance, France, Mr. Macron, and actually we have to say that President Macron reacted to a situation. He did a lot of things that I very, very much warranted, but it was not what he was doing before, and I'm not sure it's going to be what he's going to do after. That's the reality. By the way, this issue of the blasphemy with caricatures, it was so misrepresented in the Pakistani press, the one in English that I followed, that I think we have to really, just take a moment and try to reflect about that. Charlie Hebdo, which is a satirical newspaper that is really using a sort of satire that goes beyond what a lot of people think it's the normal and the way that you would like to see things. But if you don't like it, you don't read it. It's the principle, Actually, they have been doing and saying things about Christianity. That is uncomparable with whatever goes with Islam. If ever there would be any reason to react about Charlie Hebdo, it would not be from Islam, it would be from Christianity. Actually, in the so-called caricatures that are so criticized, they are really cartoons. They are representations. They are not even, they do not portray the Prophet in a negative way. What is happening is that the hardliners say, well, every representation of the Prophet is haram. So, terrorism, killing, so on, so on, so on, so on. That's what is happening. But actually, a lot of the Islamic tradition, namely the Sufi tradition, the representation of the Prophet was obviously done, and it exists. Or just go to Central Asia, there are loads of it. What do you want to do? You want to do like the Taliban did with the Buddha? You want to go to Central Asia, invade and destroy all the paintings of the Prophet that are there, and they are actually beautiful. I mean, come on, come to your senses. Reject these hate mongers that took control of this country, together with the military establishment. The military establishment thinks it's fantastic to control the country in alliance with these fanatics. Actually, I think that they are destroying the country. They are not making it stronger against India or against whoever. They are destroying the country. What is the fabric? I mean, the gold of any country, it's citizens, it's children, it's intelligence, it's knowledge. And this is exactly what Pakistan has been neglecting. In terms of education, Pakistan is a disgrace. We did make a big study on the situation in education in South Asia. Problems everywhere, not only in Pakistan, but in Pakistan, it goes beyond belief. It's really a disgrace. And Europe, well, the United Kingdom is perhaps the worst in this respect, is fueling this education, this so-called education, financing with very big amounts of money, no questions asked. This is exactly the attitude that is not helping Pakistan. It is detrimental to Pakistan, to Pakistani interests. And this is the most important thing, because the thing comes with education. I mean, if you get a normal kid, baby, and you start telling him, well, this other person, because he is infidel and he deserves the death, and you have to cut his throat, and blah, 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 blah. And it was said like that 1,000 years ago. And then if you make this sort of indoctrination, you never end. You have fanaticism spreading. And this is the problem of Pakistan. The sooner we understand it, the sooner we combat it. And of course, Europe is fundamental, the best. But unfortunately, Europe has not been doing this. I mean, it was necessary for the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Imran Khan, to declare in the most important place of the country, in the parliament, to say, well, Bin Laden is a big hero. Well, only when he declared it, it was, oh, was it so? Because if you just go to the literature, all these people writing about Pakistan, oh yes, we have to finance Pakistan because Pakistan is stabilizing. It's going to fight against terrorism. Well, even the Prime Minister of us, he is our hero. How can anybody believe that they ever fought against him? Of course, they never fought against Bin Laden. They invented the Bin Laden we know. This establishment, this military fanatic establishment of the country invented Bin Laden, and sometimes pretending, oh yeah, well, we will arrest some, and they will arrest some people that were a bit, less convenient to make believe that they were really fighting against terrorism. They were fighting against, for instance, the Pashtun people. They were fighting against the Pashtun people. They were submitting the Pashtun people, and at the same time, they were convincing everybody in the West, oh, we are fighting, but these Pashtuns are terrible. These Pashtuns are only making terrorism all the time, and we have to do that. A big lie. Now it comes to the surface. Big, big, big lie. It was the reverse. The Pashtuns, like anybody else, they are, of course, they have their religion, they have their language, their tradition, their ethnicity. They were cut into in a completely absurd way. They are a major victim of this partition and this British colonial mentality that I think we have to go over it. This mentality of making walls and barbed wire to divide the same peoples. This is a barbarity. And we have to overcome it. But the Pashtuns are victim of this, and of course, but the Pashtuns, they are showing, they are an example to us all. In a peaceful manner, they are showing that they want to fight for their rights. They want to be understood, and they are not the ones who created the Taliban. The establishment, the military fanatic establishment, created the Taliban, not the Pashtun. The Pashtun are the victims, and they are saying that. And this is a voice that should be heard. And those who are in decision-making positions in Europe should hear to that voice. Because after they say, oh, how comes there was a terrorist attack? I mean, there was a Pakistani citizen that made a terrorist attack on the old installations of Charlie Hebdo, which happened very, very recently, as we know. How comes? Well, it comes out of this situation, of this policy that is Iranians, and we have to think on the long term. Europe has to think together. I mean, it cannot do like that. Well, now Mr. Macron reacts, and then the others say, well, they say, yes, we support you, but they say that one day, 1 month afterwards, they forgot about it. That's not the way to go. We have to be united, and be united with the people of Pakistan. Because I think that the peoples of Pakistan, all of them, one way or the other, I mean, their best interest is not on the hate, not on sustaining the military fanatic establishment. No, what they want is to have peace, health, education, development. And this goes along exactly with the strategic interests of Europe. And that's what we have to go together for. And they should not allow Pakistan to be the Trojan horse of geopolitical interests like the one of China to combat India. This is not in the interest of Pakistan.
Mr. Casaca, you spoke about partition, the tragedies of partition. At the time of partition in 1947, Pakistan had 15% population of minorities, and now it is less than 3%. So no minority in Pakistan wants to leave, and they want to leave Pakistan, and they are not safe there. Forced conversion is going on. Blasphemy law is a big sword on every minority person. Comparing that thing to India, maybe you remember that earlier this year you had a seminar in Geneva, and I had asked the same question to one of your colleagues from European Parliament, that in India, minorities population is increasing comparing to 1947. Not a single Muslim wants to leave India. They are happy to live in India. Loudspeaker azan is going on 5 times a day. Prayers on the streets going on. How do you, as an independent observer, compare the situation of religious minorities in India and in Pakistan?
I mean, I think your question is very much warranted. It is so obvious. I mean, only paid propagandists that unfortunately continue to be widespread in the Western press don't see what is so obvious. I mean, if ever the problem would be the India government to go against minorities, I mean, you would not have hundreds of millions of Muslims in India that live and do exactly what you are saying. And actually, I've been in the Indian Kashmir. I have been in the valley. I have been there for some time. I really, something that I think it would be absolutely impossible to do in Balochistan, by the way, or even in the Pakistani occupied Gilgit and Baltistan. And come on, The problem is that the pundits, I mean, the so-called infidels, they were driven away. I mean, the minorities that suffered were exactly the non-Muslims. The ethnic cleansing was done in their direction. Of course, that India, and no matter what other country, be it what it will be, can never allow for a jihad to take place within its border. That is, a movement of people that couldn't care less about principles of human rights, of freedom, of democracy, but just say, our religion is better, is supreme regarding all the others. So we have the right to cut the throats of infidels, and we have the right to do whatever. I mean, this is not possible. This is not acceptable. I mean, the only country, the only place in the world that I've ever seen where the so-called independent claim was to not have its own language, you know. Actually, the Islamists in the valley of Kashmir, they managed to impose to sidelight the Kashmiri and put the Urdu in its place. Nobody has ever seen something like that. You know, this is no independentist. This is no movement for having its own rights. No, it's something completely different. This is jihad. This is pure jihad. And jihad, I'm sorry, I think it is the worst thing on the face of the earth is this sort of religious supremacism. What you have in Pakistan, I mean, it's uncomparable. And this figure is telling, of course, the minorities are being driven away because they are persecuted, contrarily to India. This is completely obvious. And so if you have, this, especially from the old colonial power and those who are influenced by the United Kingdom, when I see, I mean, in the European Parliament, it was like that. I mean, I did go to this intergroup of so-called Azad Kashmir, whatever. It was only British parliamentarians, and what they were doing there was absolutely crazy, and it was against all the reality on the ground. What they were saying. I'm not saying, of course, that India is heaven and nothing wrong happens. There is no country in the world where there are no wrong things happening. Of course, there are wrong things happening everywhere. India is a very big country. Unfortunately, is not as developed and as I think it should be. And of course, a lot of things happen there. More if you have a very big country, it's more likely to see things. If you want to look for bad things, you see them easier than if you look for it in a small country. It's the law of the numbers. So it's not my. I'm not saying that everything is fantastic, but the fundamental issues that are on the table, the right of India not to allow a jihad within its territory, it's, to me, indisputable. Whereas what is happening in Pakistan has nothing to do with it. It is people claiming for their very basic rights, to their freedom of religion, to their freedom of having access to their natural resources, their language, their characteristics, their ethnicity. This is what has been denied, and this is not possible. This is not acceptable. So to say that it's the same thing, Pakistan and India, I'm sorry, it's not the same. Who is saying it is the same, or he does not know what he is speaking about, or it is biased in his opinion.
Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir, which was a state, and then after abolition of Article 370, it became two union territories, Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir. You are one of very few diplomats who has visited Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir before abrogation of Article 370 and after abrogation of Article 370. The insurgency started there in 1989-90, and the militancy and entire region was a victim of terrorism. How do you see the situation before and after Article 370? Is it on the aspiration of Kashmiris or it is against?
Well, I'm sorry, I was not there after the article. I was not there.
Okay.
I was just before, but I was before, and what I concluded was that the situation was absolutely untenable. I mean, you could not go on like that, because if you are facing a jihad, and actually the only weapon that you have in your hand to combat jihad is the military one, it's not going to work. So something had to be done. That was, to me, very clear. So those who speak for the status quo, I think that they really are claiming something that makes no sense whatsoever. Well, then the precise solution, the way it was done. I mean, I was not in Ladakh, so, but I know that Ladakh is well, it's quite different, of course, from every point of view. Okay, I mean, the separation was a separation. What I think it's now fundamental is that we look at the people and we insist very, very clearly that, listen, you have to respect others. There are others that do not share your religion, but they are human beings as well, and they deserve to live as much as you do. So there must be a common understanding on the way that people are living. And this has to go, from school, and it's not going to, results will not be the next day. It's a long run battle. And I think Europe should be supporting this. Europe should be supporting whatever measures the authorities, the Indian authorities, are taking to get the population to terms with the basic fundamentals of respect one for the other. That's what I hope will happen. The sooner, the better.
Mr. Casaca, before 50 years, exactly before 50 years in East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, a genocide took place. About 1 million Bengalis were butchered by Pakistan's brutal army. More than 400,000 women were raped. Rape was used as a tool of war. Don't you think that the International Court of Justice should create a war crime tribunal to hold those who were the perpetrator of this genocide? Why there was no war crime tribunal to judge what had happened? Because international media and every country's intelligence reports clearly said that there was a genocide of Bengali people. Why European authorities or international authorities are not creating a tribunal of this against this army, which is even brutal today?
Yes, well, this is a very precise question. There is an international court created in Bangladesh, but only with internal jurisdiction within Bangladesh. So it does not cover those Pakistani military that are in Pakistan proper, and that were the main culprits of the genocide. It does cover, however, a lot of associates to these military authorities. These associates were mostly fanatic Islamists, and a lot of them have been tried by this court and sentenced, and some even executed. And I have been accompanying very closely the situation in Bangladesh, and actually I've seen as well a very big pressure, in the West for the justice not to be done. But the issue is that whenever you refuse justice, whenever you say that well, it was a long time ago, you are promoting impunity. You are inviting for the repetition of this to happen. I am certain that if the Pakistani military that are guilty of the crimes 50 years ago in Bangladesh, if they would have been tried, we would have saved a lot of lives in Balochistan, all over the country, from the crimes they are committing now. And I think that's what the West has to put in perspective, that this should be considered as such.
Mr. Kasaka, you mentioned Balochistan. In 1948, Pakistan occupied an independent state of Kalat and Balochistan. In 1973, they started air bombardment against Baloch people. Balochistan genocide is going on similar lines that went in East Pakistan, Bangladesh. What Baloch have to do to draw attention of international authorities to save their people, to save their resources, which are being exploited by Punjabi and Chinese army extensively?
Yeah, you are right. I think that there is a deficit of attention from Europe on what is going on in Balochistan, which is terrible, as you said. There are thousands of disappeared people, mostly civil society leaders, intellectuals, professors, students, and these cannot go on. I think that we should put the issue very high on the international agenda whenever speaking with Pakistan. This cannot continue. And we cannot allow, the West cannot allow that the crushing of the Baluchi people is done to serve geopolitical interests, foreign geopolitical interests as the ones of China.
Speaking about Gilgit Baltistan, Pakistan has declared that it will be a province of Pakistan while it is a territory of India, which was legally extradited by extradition treaty between Maharaja of Kashmir and India. Now, Pakistan is declaring it as a province. Do you think if India wages a war to liberate, to take back their area, West will support India?
Well, I support the war and nowhere, and that's not my point of view. My point of view is always to stick to the respect of human rights and try to avoid as much as possible war. And there is a way for doing this. And the way was exactly written time ago by the United Nations. So I think that the people of Gilgit and Baltistan should be free, and of course it's not possible to be free when you have a military occupation, to decide on its own future. This is the only possible way forward, because everyone speaks about Kashmir, and when people speak about Kashmir, there is always a lot of confusion, because there is the old principality of Jammu and Kashmir that his leader declared his will to join India, and this will was not respected because it was invaded. Part of the territory was invaded by the Pakistani forces. Well, it is a diverse former principality, and has a lot of areas and a lot of different people in there. Ladakh, I mean, we just spoke about Ladakh, is one of them. And I think that the people of Gilgit and Baltistan should be free to express themselves and to decide on its own future.
Mr. Kasaka, you mentioned Pakhtoon issue in your speech earlier. Duran line is a line drawn by British colonial powers between Pakhtoon land, and Pakhtoons were divided between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Do you see, as an observer, writing off of Duran line in future? Do you think that Duran line will finish? And don't you think that Pakhtoons who are victim of terrorism and who are branded as a terrorist also. So what Pakhtuns should do peacefully to come out of this dilemma that they are terrorists and they are victim of terrorism and they are divided. How to come out of this situation?
You know, the worst of this is that there are no signs of improvement because this Durham line is now there is being a wall being built there. I always find it absolutely fantastic how the international press keeps speaking about either the wall. If they speak about wall, I mean, if you make a poll, I mean, what do you read in the press about wall? Well, either it is the one of the United States and Mexico, which, by the way, already existed in long stretches. I saw it before Mr. Trump became president, or it is Israel, Palestine. There are no other walls. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. But the issue is that the wall that the Pakistani authorities are building there, it's a wall on a border that is not recognized, that is conflictual between the two countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan, and is very much felt as an aggression by the Pashtun people, with good reason, and is going against everything that we should prescribe to the region. I mean, if you just look, for instance, even here in Belgium, in Belgium, you have, everybody knows, you have those who speak one language, those who speak one other, and then you have bilingual cities like Brussels, where I am right now. And even, there is a German minority, in across the border with Germany. And they are Belgium. And people learn how to live with it, but of course there is no wall. And the issue there, the most pressing issue there is for the international community to say to Pakistan, tear down this wall that you are building that is increasing the drama of the Pashtun people and that is increasing the international tension between the two countries, between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and is not at all helpful to fight jihadism that is spreading there. The jihadism is not because of the Pashtuns. Pashtuns are very, very much expressing and explaining to the world. No, it's absolutely a lie. We are not the reason why for jihadism. If we are empowered, if we are respected, we actually will be the ones that will finish up with the Talibans and all these fanatics that actually are created by the Islamo military establishment in Pakistan and supported by erroneous policies of the West of appeasement that really go nowhere. The West should better look at the people, and the Pashtun people should be respected and should be dealt with rather than the fanatics, the terrorists, and all of these people that are part of the problem. They are not part of the solution.
Coming to China, Pakistan's prime minister is screaming about Islamophobia, and they say that Muslims are being victimized across the globe. But they never speak about Muslims who are victim of human rights violations in China, especially the Uyghur province, where there are independent reports that more than 1 million Muslims are kept in camps and obliged to eat pork and the name Muhammad is banned there, Quran is banned there, and all these things. So how do you see the human rights situation of Muslims in China?
Well, we just saw, a prominent Pakistani citizen in the United States that is obviously aligning with the Islamo-military establishment in Pakistan, claiming that Muslims are freer in China than they are in the West. When you are allowing yourself to say such things, it's a bit useless to speak, because this would be laughable if it not be a tragedy, because China actually claims that, well, we just reacted against jihad because they were jihadists. Well, I can imagine that jihad is not sparing whatever, and this ideology is very nefarious. And I might imagine that there would be jihad over there, even, of course, if one cannot compare a democratic country, a place where you fundamentally do whatever you do. Well, India, Kashmir, I was there. I mean, it's completely a lie that people would be, forbidden to do whatever. I mean, there were lots of military, that's true. But I mean, all the mosques, all the religions, everything, the language, whatever, the regional authorities were actually deciding and managing everything other than the military and the police. And so, well, come on, it's completely crazy. I mean, there were no concentration camps, nothing like that, But of course, the problem is jihad. I mean, in communist China, especially after 2014, when Mr. Xi started to reimpose the strict Maoist line that is crushing everyone that is not going again, with the directives of the Communist Party. Well, has nothing to do with it. So it is absolutely unbelievable that there was any sort of organized or massive jihad. They claim, they make films now with thousands of children being fanaticized in communist China. I mean, come on. It's really the industry of fake news. I mean, it's not possible. And the issue there, in China, is that what is in fact human rights? I mean, where you can say, well, I'm sorry, this is absolutely my right to read the Quran, to go to the mosque, and to pray Allah and to praise Muhammad. This is a basic religious freedom that SADF and myself, we stand for, without restrictions. Never in my life I did, allow anything against whatever religion. This is the right of people, either the Turkic minorities in East Turkestan or whoever. This is a right. Of course, when you start saying, well, my religion commands that I kill the infidel, that's over. I mean, it's no religion any longer, It's something completely different. Or when my religion says, well, if my daughter is not marrying who I want, I kill her. I'm sorry. It's absolutely unacceptable. So this border is obvious. And what China is doing is the only place, to my knowledge, where you really can say, well, this is really persecution of Islam. Because what Mr. Khan is claiming, that is Islamophobia in France, and that we should, do terrorism and violence in Europe because there is a lot of Islamophobia. This is absolutely a lie. There's nothing like that. I mean, no Muslim in France has any problem if he does respect the basic laws and the basic constitution. If he engages in a fanatic, violent cult of death and destruction and supremacy, well, that's another story. Of course, that's another story. If you say, if you send your children to school and your children in school say, if you say something that I don't like, I cut your throat. It's not possible. Not possible. And I hope Mr. Macron will not go back to the old days. I mean, it's not possible. That's not Islamophobia. That's the protection of freedom. The protection of freedom of a professor that was assassinated because he was just speaking about what was the question being debated. This is against freedom. So it's no Islamophobia. No. It's freedomophobia from the fanatics. That's the reverse. But in China, we do have, yes, not really Islamophobia, because we did have, and in China, we did have a very good analysis we published in the beginning of this year, because with Iran, because actually the Communist Party in China, it allows a lot of Muslims to come in Iran, to be indoctrinated in the faculties of the Iranian theocracy. Why? Well, because their problem is politics. It's not religion, and so fantastic. If it aligns strategically with the Communist Party imperial ideas for the whole of the world. Oh, well, that's fantastic. We agree with it. But if not, well, then that's a problem. Well, and what is happening in East Turkestan is that the people obviously are reacting and are saying, well, we want to be out of this, because there is genocide there. I mean, women are prevented and to have children. They are forced to marry non-Muslim people. They are persecuted in the most horrendous ways. You spoke about the concentration camps. And of course, how can you want to be part of a country that treats you like that? It's no way. So this is only natural, this reaction. It's not, but it is the persecution of whoever goes against your strategic interests by religion or whatever. But it's very interesting to see this exception with Iran, when there is an alignment to a conspiracy to dominate the world. Well, then they think things differently in terms of religion, and I really commend this research that was done by one of our junior associates in SADF that we did on Chinese policy regarding Islam. That is very, very telling.
I have two more questions. I'm sorry I have exceeded the time, but I think that it is a very fruitful session for people to listen an independent perspective. My second last question is that in China attacked Indian Union Territory of Ladakh. China has already occupied Tibet since last 70 years. Uyghur is Turkestan. And then Hong Kong situation is in front of us. China is stopping the world to recognize Taiwan. China has an expansionist colonial mindset. How do you see that? Is India alone to fight China to stop its expansionist mindset, or West is with India?
It's the greatest task of the moment, is to create a great alliance with principles to stop this aggressive expansionism from the Communist Party in China that is showing everywhere, in every direction. The South China Sea that is not touching India, but it's touching a lot of other countries, is very telling of this imperial mindset. And in water, it's the same thing. I actually made a report on the issue very recently on the way that it is managing the issue of water on the whole of the Hindu-Kush Himalayan region, and it's absolutely preposterous. And I think there must be an alliance in the basis of principles. And India, I think that I've been thinking that for a very long time. India is the biggest democracy in the future. India has to be helped, and we have to engage as much as possible with India. India is the key for peace, stability, freedom, and democracy in the whole world for the foreseeable future. I've been thinking like that much before SADF was created, and I do believe in that. And I hope that Western leaders, well, the international community, because the West nowadays, it's something that is a bit meaningless, because obviously Japan and South Korea are perhaps more important on the so-called West than a lot of Western European countries. And so West is, it's not a good expression, let's put it like that. But this coalition of those who do believe in human rights, freedom, democracy, development, it has to be built, and selfishness has to be put aside. And of course, India is the central point of this coalition.
My last question: whenever there is a freedom movement, when people of a region, they are asking for freedom movement, there has to be a discriminative behavior on ground. People are facing discrimination or subjugation. But we see a movement of independence called Khalistan, and they exist only in Europe and Canada and America. But in India, I think your study is very vast about India. Sikh community, they don't have any discrimination on ground. So why West is allowing, as we saw that there is a farmers protest in India, but it is hijacked by Khalistani movement in London, for example. They had a protest and they hijacked entire farmers movement, and there were slogans against India and Khalistan's independence. Now on 10th of December they have announced that 10 cities of world in West, especially America and Europe, they will close down Indian embassies and they will hold protests during this COVID. So why this Khalistan movement, and who is funding it?
Well, I think obviously the Khalistan movement is being promoted by Pakistan in its logic that whatever it can do to create mayhem across the border in India, it's good for Pakistan. I think it's Iranian calculation, but that's the way it is. Obviously, I don't think that it makes any sense whatsoever. I mean, if there would be perhaps one Lahore was perhaps the main city where you had the right to call for whatever would be Khalistan. And Lahore, it's quite the opposite. And so those who have been ethnic cleansing the people are those who pretend to be in their favor. I mean, it's completely, it's a basic manipulation. I think, that the issue of agriculture and farming is a very important issue that we would need to consider on its own right. And it's very, very unfortunate that this issue has been hijacked by Pakistan the way it has been hijacked. And it is very, very sad to see that there are Western leaders that do not at all seem to understand what's going on, and they do really act in a very silly way, actually making a lot of prejudice to what I think is fundamental to have a clear basis of understanding between all those nations that believe in our basic values and rights.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kasaka. It was such a wonderful session with you, and thank you for enlightening our viewers with your views. Thank you very much for giving us time.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. It was a pleasure, and I'm so sorry that sometimes I speak a bit too much, but I hope I did not tire our audience. Thank you very much.
We were very much enlightened, and thank you very much for your time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.